Hey, hey, hey. Oops, so you're supposed to do a little intro right there.
No, you can do your Bill Cosby impression as poor of a choice as that may be. So
Is that what he used to do?
I don't know. So
Yeah, it was not Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
Hey, greetings. Say, hey, this is Karen Johnston, and I'm here with APA poultry enthusiast, passionate chicken lover, Jim Adkins, right?
That's close enough. That's better than hey, hey, hey. So how you been?
It's been a crazy day, and we always do a little bit of small talk. I didn't even have a chance to tell you that my dad is 82, and he's having a little bit of some medical problems. So I am getting on a jet plane tomorrow morning. I'm going to go see my dad real quick, fly tomorrow, see him Wednesday, fly home Thursday. So anytime that's happening, it's rearranging my schedule in life a little bit. And so it's been a little bit crazy today. And we had downpour this morning. Did it rain in North Carolina?
Not significantly.
Yeah, it poured. I mean, I was out feeding my birds and I came home. I was spending time. Actually, you know what I did? I went to my New Hampshire chickens to get some therapy. You ever notice that?
Yeah.
Chickens are awesome therapists. If you haven't figured that out, that's why, those of you who are part of our viewing people, if you need some therapy, you need to get some chickens, because you remember this. Karen, you've heard me say this, that I pastor, so I shepherd. I take care of people flocks and I take care of chicken flocks. And sometimes the chicken flocks treat you a lot better.
Yeah, probably.
Hey,
it seems more relaxing. Yep.
What? Oh, yeah. Well, anytime they don't. I mean, I will tell you, I took care of my neighbor's chickens this morning, and a stinking male came up behind me and flogged me from behind. So he got a gracious kick. My kicks are always gracious, but they're firm if you attack me from behind.
And then you changed your clothes and showered before you went over to your New Hampshire, right?
No, I went to my New Hampshire first.
There you go.
Yes. I practice very good biosecurity, especially with my New Hampshire. So listen, the breed. Let's talk breed of the week. You need to kick us off here.
All right, let's get started. Let's find out who it is.
All right. So you notice in the beginning, in our little invitation song, it says, grab your standard of perfection. I wonder how many of you who've been a part of the show have actually gotten your hands on a standard of perfection, whether it's one of the oldie goldies or if you got a current edition of the standard of perfection. Either way, I'm going to tell you, the reason our producer, Miss Karen Johnston, puts that in there is we're always talking about the standard of perfection, and we're talking about breeds that are in the standard of perfection. And today we're going to talk about, this is episode number 8, and we're talking about the first white egg layer that we have talked about in our shows. And before I jump into the Hamburgs, if you do have your standard, and even if you don't, I want to remind you that the Hamburgs they're in the Continental class. And I'm looking at the page in the Standard of Perfection, the current edition. And it says there's Continental is broken into Northern European breeds. Of course, that's the Barnevelders, the Campines, the Hamburgs, the Lochenvelders. I love Lochenvelders. Make a note, Karen, Lochenvelders and Welsummers. Those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the Northern European. And then you have Polish. We'll never allow Polish on our show. No, I'm just kidding. It actually would be really fun to do Polish.
You need to get the Polish breed club on so they can talk about it with respect. Unlike
But you notice there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 varieties of Polish. And then there's the French. And the French are the Houdans, the Crevecoeurs, the Lafleches or Laflays, the Faverels, and the Morans. So that's the continental class. But we're going to talk Hamburgs today, the breed of Hamburgs. Now, I mentioned to you that this is our first white egg layer. Actually, Miss Karen reminded me of that as we were backstage prior to the show. And I will tell you this, and leave it there if you will, Karen, because I want to tell you this about white earlobes. A lot of you may not know this, but if your chicken has a white earlobe, there's a good chance it lays a white shelled egg. And all your red earlobe chickens, they lay brown eggs. You're like, no way, I never knew that. That's pretty much 95, 96%. There's a few exceptions. Can you think of one, Karen?
Silkies?
Well, silkies have kind of a turquoise earlobe, and
they lay a turquoise egg, right?
No. Nice try, though. I'm glad you clarified that. Yeah. So, but the Hamburg is a white egg layer. Should have a nice, solid white earlobe. And I'll tell you something else that's cool about these Hamburgs. A little personal thing here. I love the silver spangled Hamburgs. Of all the varieties that you see here, there's 6 of them. The silver spangled are by far my favorite. I'll never forget when I was a teenager and I don't know how I got my hands on the silver spangled Hamburg. I can't remember if it was a chicken auction or somebody's backyard or somebody was selling them, but I fell in love with the silver spangled Hamburgs. But you see on our picture here, there's all these varieties, 1, 2, 6 of them, all 6 varieties. They've been in the standard from the beginning. Am I getting that right, Karen?
Yep.
All of them came in at the same time, which is very, very unusual. Typically, it's one color, then another color. But no, the rich history of the Hamburg breed goes way back to the 1800s, and all 6 of these were in the standard from the beginning. So let me point out a couple other things. And I'm mostly going with the standard today, and I want to encourage you. You're like, you don't need to read it to us. We have our own standard. Well, there's maybe some who don't have standards. Now, what year is that? 1905. All right. When you look at these, to this very day, if you look in your current standard, and I have the picture right here, there is not much difference in type. Some of the other breeds have progressed a little bit from the Barred Plymouth Rocks. Even the Rhode Island Reds have changed. A little bit of body type has changed, but the Hamburgs are an old race. They go way back here, and the name of the breed is German. But their origin is in Dutch. You had the little picture of the map up there. We won't go back to that. But and as I said, that's pretty impressive. Very cool. Somebody's from Morocco. Sorry, I shouldn't be distracted by the comments. But they were originated, and I already told you they were in the continental class. And they've definitely been influenced. The standard talks about some of their English fanciers over the years. And you think about the different varieties. There's a lot of different influence. Probably the most popular color right now is the silver spangled. But we're going to show you some pictures today, thanks to one of our Hamburg enthusiasts. His name is Rick. You'll see some of his pictures. But you've got the penciled varieties, which is a totally different. You can see in this picture there's a huge difference between the spangling and the penciling. And the penciling is more, has those barrings that go all the way across the bird, similar to the Plymouth Rock, but a little bit of a different color pattern. So, you know, the body is, as you can see, it's got this graceful carriage and all the various attractive colors. And of course, they are, if you see a good one in a poultry show, they're stunning. They are very, very good. Now, here's another thing. They do have a rose comb. They have a rose comb. And let's talk about this for a minute. This is a beautiful educational slide, and it's really important that you understand this. The rose comb is, I guess, for lack of a better term, we talk about it like a rose flower on top of a chicken's head. Obviously, they're red, all right? Most all of chickens' combs are. And you'll notice on this particular rose comb, you do have, the standard tells us, you see number 3 on the left-hand side of the APA standard from 1923. It says spike. The spike on a rose comb, it varies from breed to breed, even though they have a rose comb. Like this rose comb on a on a Hamburg, the leader should go up. On a Wyandotte, it's supposed to, I believe the standard says, Karen might have to back me up on this. It might, I think it says that the spike on the Wyandotte should follow the head, which is a huge difference. But in both cases, or in any case, when you have, this is a rose comb, and some of you are like, no way, this is awesome, Jim and Karen, I'm learning about combs today. Well, this is the rose comb. And the most important thing, and I love the way this is expressed in the standard of perfection, is you want a rose comb that is balanced on the head. You notice here, our standard people are showing us what a comb that's lopsided, a comb that doesn't, you know, obviously leans to one side of the head. It's you do not want that in the rose comb. And so it's just something that you want to pay attention to. The other thing, I want to make sure we mention this to you, and that is, you remember, we always talk about a primary purpose. A silver spangled Hamburg is not a meat chicken. And again, the standard talks about in England, or in, you know, it was called, at one time, it was commonly known as the Dutch everyday layer. I love that. The Dutch everyday layer, and typical shape, and the carriage should be the same in all varieties, although the blacks and the spangleds are a little bit bigger in size. And so I like what the standard says. It said their economic qualities are an ornamental, a non-setting bird. By the way, Karen, how are you dealing with any setters right now?
No.
You've been culling that out of your Rhode Island Reds, haven't you?
Well, I allow it after the second full year. So the 3-year-olds can set, but I don't want my pullets or my 1-year-old setting.
Well,
just what I decided. Everybody,
some of my old Australorp girls are setting machines. I know you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I'm working on it, but yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But I will tell you this: Hamburgs are not setters. I'll just tell you this from a personal perspective. When I raised Hamburgs as a teenager, they're actually quite spastic. I love that picture. You know why? Because Rick is in Illinois. He shared all these pictures with us. And he's either in northern Illinois or in Wisconsin. And I love the snow. The snow. I'm not supposed to talk about the background, talk about the bird. But Hamburgs, whether you have them in your backyard or you're breeding them or you're judging them, they can be so spastic. they're wanting to shoot through the ceiling of your coop, and so they're very very lively. They're very attentive. They can fly high up into trees, which your Rhode Island Reds can't do.
That's a good
and
thing.
So they're a non-setting fowl. They have a lot of energy. They're good egg layers. They, and not to say that you can't eat a silver spangled Hamburg or a black, but they'll just have a smaller carcass. And so you also, since I have the standard open, you need to, no matter who you are, no matter what breed you're breeding, you need to pay attention to the disqualifications. And the disqualifications in Hamburgs, it says red in the earlobes. Remember, we want white earlobes, Karen. Are you getting me?
I think I hear you.
And it says 1/3, or the earlobe can't be more than 1/3 if it's more than 1/3 red. And shanks should be, did you say that? We were discussing that backstage. How did you say that, Karen?
I said leaden blue. I don't know if that's right or not.
I don't know if it's leaden blue or leaden blue, but we'll let, neither one of us.
But that's the picture that I first noticed it. I said, what is going on with her legs? So then I looked it up and saw that, there's a color.
Yeah. So I'm really curious. I'm assuming because these are non-setters, that girl, golden penciled there, she's probably dust bathing, you think?
That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, Rick, thank you. I don't know if Rick's on, but I sure appreciate. We're so thankful. The Hamburg Club of America is they're doing some great stuff, some really, really good stuff. And so let's see what other was there anything else you thought I should highlight on the Hamburg, Karen, that comes to your mind, or while you're with some of these pictures, one of the most popular things about the Hamburgs are the bantams. There's probably way more bantams than there are large fowl all across the United States. But I'll tell you what, when I have the space, a large Hamburg flock will be in my deck of cards. I absolutely love them. They can be a little feisty too. So let's see what other pictures we got here.
And Rick does have a YouTube channel with some pictures of his birds and some videos. So
cool.
I enjoyed watching those.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So here's some, I'm assuming it's hard to tell. Sometimes there's probably some black bantams here and leading.
All right. Yeah. Let's see. So Joe says lead as in the chemical element. So lead. That would make me win that argument, but we don't know.
Yeah.
I want to notice a trophy.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. That must have been
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
That must have been a real calm silver spangled Hamburg right there. But you'll notice, like the bird on the left here, you want to make sure when you're breeding these, the spangling is very important. And I'm gonna read about that spangling in the listen to the spangling on the color on the female. It says the body color of the female. Listen to breast, clear, silver white, each feather ending with a moderately large, lustrous, greenish, black spangle. The spangle being proportionate to the size of the feather. Now, obviously, this is the perfect painting. And look at her, especially on the female, and I've seen them like this, Karen, where those females tails are marked almost perfectly. When you see a good silver spangle, she's not bad. She's got the tips of the main tail feathers. Her wings are marked pretty well. But I'll tell you what, they're a hard, there's some good ones. Now, I want you to notice here, the bird all the way to the left is that's a silver-laced Wyandotte. Wonder how she got into the mix. But those are and Hamburgs will be notorious. You'll never find like some of our larger dual purpose breeds, Plymouth Rocks, Australorbs, New Hams, Rhode Island Reds. They can be a little lazy and perch on the ground. Not a Hamburg, man. They'll find a place to roost. No matter where it is, they'll go high up into the trees. And so anyways, anything else, Karen? What do you think? What other pictures we got here?
Oops. Wow, that was a little much. Yeah.
Couple of males there. Looks like bantams. Yeah. So, hey, they're a fun bird. If you want a non-setter, lays a white egg, has a lot of energy. They're good foragers. They're very, very active birds, and they're fun. I'm looking forward to getting some more of them at some point down the road.
So you see them at the shows, but more in the bantam variety?
Yeah. Every now and then you'll see, probably on the large fowl side, you see the silver spangled the most, but you will find you'll find the golden. I don't know that I've ever seen a golden spangled, but I have seen golden penciled, quite a few large fowl golden penciled, but they're just not marked real well. And when you see a good one, it's spectacular, but
it looks like a terribly difficult bird to breed, like the color pattern especially. But
yeah, it takes work. It takes work. So anyways, we're going to continue in our show here, and it kind of has to do with well, I suppose with every chicken, huh, Karen?
Yeah, well, hold on.
All right,
we got to do our thing here. So he's always in a hurry.
I've never seen that little spinny thing like that.
Nope, that's because the last time we did a selection spotlight was the first episode when our stream stopped midstream, so we were conserving time by not playing the segment intro.
Oh, I see. So, all right, we are. In my opinion, well, it's more than my opinion. It's a fact. We're going to talk about. Am I introducing this or are you?
Sure, go for it.
Oh, goody. We are going to talk about the head of a chicken. The head of a chicken. I hope, actually, I'll assure you that when we're done with this selection spotlight, you'll never see the head of a chicken the same again. All right? So if you're a note taker, write this down. The head of a chicken will tell you everything about that bird. For an example, if you look at the skull of a meat bird, if you have a wide skull, you'll have a good wide body. If you have a narrow skull, most likely you'll have a narrow body. Now, you see here, when we talk about head, you see where Karen was limiting me on what she wants me. But what we really want to zero in on during this selection spotlight is the head itself. And we're going to talk about the beak. And then we're also going to talk about the eye and the eye set. But this is you always want to go back. People, listen. When it comes to selection, there is a section about the head in your standard of perfection that is so critical for you to learn and for you to understand. And I'm just looking at some of those pages now, and you need to go there and look. And So, but this here, this is a great head, but those are the points that we're going to talk about. So Karen, you're going to help keep me focused here and kind of, what are we doing here?
All right. So in general, now the head has a much wider variety of things that will show up in the standard. It does not seem to be, when we were talking fluff, it pretty much all the breeds describe the same thing. The head standards are all across the board. Some have one word, some have a paragraph, some have, but here's a general one for the Orpingtons that's pretty standard so the head is rather long, broad, and deep. So to me, that defines the length of the head, the width of the head, and then the depth of the head. So
yeah, which is, I'll tell you this, whatever breed of chicken that you're working with, you've got to learn, you really have an eye for the head. You have an eye for the bird. I remember some of the old time judges, and I would kind of preach the same thing today, that if you've got an eye for the bird, it's a gift, and it'll stick with you. And judges in my life over the last 40 years, they can walk down an aisle and say, that's a good chicken. The same is true with a head. You can look at the head of an Orpington or a Hamburg and go, that bird's got a great head, or a Wyandotte, or a Cornish. And the reality is, and I'm just reinforcing what Karen just said, is that the length and the width and the depth, you definitely want to read the definition, because I said a wide skull gives a wide body. Well, some birds don't have an overly wide body, just like all your Mediterranean breeds. They're all egg-producing birds. So they're not going to have this super wide body. They're going to have depth of body, and so their head's not going to be this big wide skull. But if you take a Cornish, which we talked about a few weeks ago, and you're going to have a nice wide skull. And the other thing about the standard, all right, is I lost my train of thought. Read this for us, Karen.
The whole thing?
Well, kind of, there was something.
The slide, but it's basically what you're talking about. So this is in the first one I found, it was in like 1923, but it's still in the current standard now. It's just in the beginning part, the interpretation of standard talks about the terms that frustrate me so much: broad, medium, deep. And it's just saying what you were basically saying, that it's in proportion to the size and character of your breed. So here's the example. So in other words, medium, as applies to the size of the Orpington male and female combs, does not mean that the comb on the male should be of the same size as the comb on the female.
Wow.
It's just that they should be in proportion. And then it also isn't between breeds. So medium, as applied to the combs of both the Plymouth Rock and the Orpington, does not mean that the Orpington carries a Plymouth Rock comb, because
you know what's cool about that?
Size.
I maybe read that a gazillion years ago, but that says it perfectly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really helpful. All you chicken people who are like, man, I want to learn about the head of a chicken, read that, pay attention to it. That's really helpful. Karen, you're an amazing, you draw this stuff out and you use it, and it's a very teachable moment. I want all the listeners to give her a round of applause. All right.
It's in the standard. I didn't do anything except for slightly show it on the screen when I maybe shouldn't. So I thought we could start with skull width, because that's the thing I actually understand. Like skull width, I get that. It's the width of the skull. That's a pretty easy one for me.
It is. And I'm not sure what I love go back to that slide there.
Yep.
I want you to notice, really, to me more than anything, all of you awesome viewers, is if you look down on the bird and you see the comb there down the middle, all right? You're looking at both sides of the top of the eyeball, and that's the skull width, and you want to pay attention to that. All right, next slide.
So I was just showing you some real life pictures of skull
Yeah,
break.
and we did our best to try and get some good headshots. These are you know, what I want you to do here, Karen. Look at, even when you're facing on the bird like this, you look at the eye set, and you can see the width of skull. They assume that's an Australorp on the left. You'll notice she's got a little bit more width on both sides of her comb compared to, is that a Rhode Island Red on the right?
Yep, yep.
And she's a little less, has less width on her. And really, you want both of an Australorp and a Rhode Island Red. I'm curious what the standard says, but with the skull on those two birds is very, very important to me, because if you get a narrow skull on an Australorp or a Rhode Island Red, you're going to have a narrow body. Matter of fact, I got rid of a few, did a little culling down of my breeding girls of my New Hampshires Saturday morning. And I have a gentleman up the road. He's like, I'll take any extra females you have, right? Well, I noticed when I went in and I was, when I was evaluating the birds and figuring out who I'm going to get rid of, then I was glancing at heads. And sure enough, some of those New Hampshires with less width in their skulls were smaller birds, more narrow birds, and down the road they went to Mr. Bruce's house. So anyways.
So I'm gonna ask you a question here, and I'm gonna take this picture away just so I don't. So when we talk about selecting, can you share? It really helped me when you explained how you're comparing just one bird against the next bird. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so skulls is a really easy thing to start with, right? If you're out there, you've got 20 birds and you need to just start culling somewhere. If you don't, you know what I mean? Like, you just have to pick one. And so can you explain just,
Yeah. So, and I try to always think about, oh, what did I do that Karen learned so much at that backyard training session? But I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, what Karen's referring to is the idea, the concept that you have this standard of perfection and it says, this is what the head should be. Well, it's just like if you go and, let me just pick one. So if you go to, a Plymouth Rock.
Oh, that has a terrible head description. Don't do that one.
It does? Okay, you tell me which one to read.
Just go to the Rhode Island Red.
Oh, yeah. Your favorite chicken now.
The Australorp has the exact same head description.
It does? Yeah. So let me look here. I want to read this to you because, and this is to really exclamation point what she was just saying. Rhode Island Reds. The head. I love it. Good pick. Medium in length, fairly deep, inclined to be flat on top rather than round. It's awesome. Now, if you're a newbie, you're like, medium in length? How do you know medium in length? How do you know if it's fairly deep or really deep? Is this what you're talking about, Karen?
Yeah, well,
and so what happens is you read this description and then you look at your birds and you go, I'm stumped.
Yeah.
Here's the secret. When I show up at her place, and it's one of my favorite places to go when we do breeder selection, let's say she has 20 Rhode Island Red Pullets. You start with what the standard says, but then you have to start comparing heads to one another. It's the birds that are in your flock. Okay? So, and if you've got narrow heads and wide heads, well, the wider head hopefully will be closer to the description of the standard, and that becomes your selection point, your grading point. Is that kind of what you were referring to, Karen?
Nope. That's where you you're comparing the birds, like you're literally like, okay, is this one wider or is this one wider? And then you can like, oh no, put her away. And then so this one stays, and then you get the next one out and you just compare, it's a manageable, it's an easily observable, manageable trait that, that just, you just end up discarding all the ones that are below average, and then you can go ahead.
Yeah, Karen, let me ask you kind of roughly, and I think this would be helpful for me and for listeners. How many times have you and I done selection together? It's been 5 years worth?
Yeah, but at least twice a year. So
okay. So probably anywhere from 10 to 12 times we've gone through birds together on your property.
Yeah.
Or with your flock. Do you feel like you can pick out a head better now than you could in the beginning?
Yes, 100% with width, but I still struggle with, and we're going to get into what I struggle with, which is the length and the depth.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? But width, sure, I absolutely got that one. I don't even have to pull out my calipers anymore. the first years, I was using my caliper. And
I remember that. I'm like, whoa, she is serious. She is wanting to make sure. When she heard me say the head of a chicken is everything, she took it literally. So all right. So let's talk length, right?
Okay. Yep. Wait. I want to go back to one more question I have. And this is can it be, I've heard, so many times people go to the extreme, right? Like, oh, you need the widest skull you can get. And can it be too much? Can it be too wide?
Yes. People, listen. Now this picture, you can see a little bit of how obviously she's flat on top. You can see on this side of her comb, she's got width there. But sometimes the width can be so overbearing, it will actually come down and cover part of the eye. It's notorious on large fowl Brahmas. I mean, I've seen Brahmas or Brahmas, whether you raise I call them Brahmas, and people have fun with that all over. But I've seen them where the skull and the skin of the skull over the top, because they're so wide, it's covering half of their eyeball and they can't see. That is an overdone head or too much width. So the answer is absolutely yes.
So that was all. I just, this year when you were here, it was the first year when you said, yeah, we maybe are getting a little bit too much there. We're just starting to just peek down over.
Yeah. Which is great in the sense that in the beginning we said, let's try and get a little bit more width of skull. Did we not?
Yep. So variation is our friend, but we have to select.
That's it.
We have to select carefully. Yeah.
That's it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So here are the ones I have much more trouble with. So let's talk head length. So
well, and let me encourage you, Karen. It's harder to tell length because we talk about crow-headedness, and a crow head is too long. And so we do want the appropriate amount of length on the head of a chicken. And again, when you look at the standard, you read the description of the head, you read the description of the comb, you go to the picture. You want to get a mind's eye of that in your head of what the length is and what it looks like. So
we've got 3. So these are the standards so the Cochins, if we just talk length, okay? So the head for the Cochin is rather short. And for the Minorca, or however you say that, it's of medium length. And then for the blue Andalusian, it says moderately long. So I feel like those are 3 different. You've got a short Cochin, a medium Minorca, and a long Andalusian. So, but wait, here are their pictures. And I don't see that at all in any of them. So I feel like I am just blind to it. So there you go. There's the Cochin from that.
Why? Because all these heads look the same?
Well, no, I mean, the Cochin, I see the deep, right? But I see the deep in the Cochin. I actually don't see the deep in the Minorca. Because they all have the same. They all say deep, so the depth should be the same for all of them. But I guess I see the rather short. I mean, I don't know.
Part of what you're going to see, look at the Cochin, look at the neck featherings and the hackle. That will make that head look more like it fits the bird. You can see I wish I had a pointer here, but on that Cochin, you can see where on the Minorca and on the blue Andalusian, that hackle and that neck feathering is much more narrow. I'm talking about the overall size of it. And you are justified to go, well, I don't really see it here. And that's where you learn your breed, and you kind of, I'm telling you, and maybe this is a rabbit trail, and so what? There are judges, people who love to judge chickens, and they cannot pick the right birds. It happens all the time. And typically they get their license and they'll judge 1 or 2 shows and screw everything up, and then they don't get called back because you got to have an eye for the bird. And you're like, Jim, you're excusing we do the best we can to articulate what the bird should look like in the standard. But these are 3 good heads. And I agree with you that when you think of length, they look very, very similar. And so I think you could, to a certain extent, put that Minorca head with its eye set and the skull and even his beak and put it on the Cochin, and you wouldn't see a whole lot of difference. And so I don't know if that's helping the situation.
I'm thinking that a lot of it is to do with proportion, right? So you have to look at the whole bird. You're looking
That's right.
It's got a short head in terms of the size of his body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think some of it's that I'm ignoring because then the pictures are so big. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about that. So let's talk. So depth. So that's the third one.
Yeah. Now leave it here for a second. I always tell everybody, they say, how do I really evaluate depth of head or head depth here? And that is right at the top of the skull or right above the eye and go down to right below the beak. And that's when we talk about head depth. And you want or sometimes I refer to it when I'm teaching as depth of skull. All right. The depth, same thing. And so, what should I elaborate on that, Karen? Well, that makes sense what I'm saying?
I'm letting you talk about crowhead now. So would you like to see a crow from the Indiana Audubon website?
Well, actually, she showed me this earlier, and I'm like, no, that's great. Leave it up there. Because here's an exaggerated, when we talk about a crow head on a chicken, simple people, very important. Look how narrow and long the crow head is. When we talk about a crow head, that's what we mean. And you'll find a crow head, birds that have a little bit of crowed look to them. Actually, go back one, if you will, is game chickens, especially the large fowl. But I want you to note here, this is an excellent, on number 12, picture number 12, is an excellent, it's just the opposite of a crow head. You see that it's a balanced head. If I could show you this bird live, sometime we will at some poultry school or some seminar, or maybe some selection day at Karen's, and you all show up on the new property with the new John Deere tractor. But that's a good head. All right, let's move on because I know we got plenty to talk about. I agree.
But so I think crowheadedness to me has now become, it can be long and shallow. Like it's sort of both depth and length. It can probably be one or the other, but in general, it's more both things together. Okay.
You're exactly right.
Okay.
You're exactly right.
We looked at these pictures, these 2 birds that went to the Plymouth Rock one.
Yeah, and obviously the bird on the left is now I mean, she has a crow head. And these are both the same age. They're both pullets. And what I mean by pullets and both the same age is they're probably just starting to lay. They're just coming into production, which means, people, as soon as she starts laying, she stops growing. It's very important. That's when I teach everybody, that's the best time to select your pullets is at the point of lay. I'll argue anybody hand and go to the whatever it takes to that's the best time to select your pullets. And this pullet on the left, they're the same age. They're probably could potentially even be full sisters, and she's very crow-headed. And that most likely it'll fill out a little bit, but it'll never have the quality of head as that bird on the right. Does that make sense, Karen?
Yep. And
Goody.
You actually, this picture is not, you don't know this is coming, so you did very good. So I did find one breed in the standard that has a thin head. So, and that was, like you said, that was the game. The head for these was the long, lean, and bony.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. This is another bird. There's a friend of mine who has the color's called red pile. And he has, if you see a large fowl modern game, they're stunning and their heads are cool. And that's the point to our whole selection point, is that you're looking at the head and how it fits on the bird, specifically on the breed of bird. If you put a big old wide skull off of Brahma on this game chicken, you would be like, that is ugly. No, but that picture, of course, is probably a Schilling painting. That's definitely a great looking head. So I'm glad you pulled that in. You did a little more homework after our discussion this morning.
I finally found it. And since Kenny Troiano is on here of the Game Fowl World, I think this explains whenever they show videos of their birds, they just don't look like chickens to me. They just almost seem, and I'm like, I think that might be the biggest difference is, you know what I mean? They're obviously stationed in angles and stuff, but I was like, they just don't look like chickens.
Well, and the modern game versus the old English game, or some of the different kinds of game chickens, they look a lot different. I mean, a modern game, you look at these, and it'll be fun to do these at some point. But the length of the leg is actually supposed to be the length of the body and the neck. That's one of the ways that we judge them and we measure them. So anyways, good job, Karen. I'm so glad you brought that in. So
now we've got, the other parts we talked about are the beak length and the beak shape. So I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say here. Let me read this to you. We're still on the Rhode Island Reds. The beak says this: medium length and slightly curved. That sound right, Karen?
Yes, it's on the screen right now.
Well,
put your glasses back on. Yeah.
Yeah. So the best thing, if you can't figure out I shouldn't be so mean, but you should be able to learn your beaks and what the beak should look like fairly easily, which just reminds me, I just remembered, Karen, when I was doing selection at my new hamps on Saturday morning, I saw a male with his beak was too long. It needed to be trimmed. And I just forgot. Andy from Ghana. Wow, cool. Anyway, so you've got Wyandottes that says short, well curved. All right. Plymouth Rock, moderately short, stout, regularly curved. And then the Rhode Island Red, medium length, slightly curved. And these are older. I wonder, well, that's the same as what I just read, is it not?
Yep. Yeah. I think I checked all of them that they still said that now.
Yeah. So on the beak, it's pretty, what you want, if it says slightly curved, remember, this is so cool. This helped me when I read it in a book.
Okay.
That you want to pay attention to that curve on that beak, because that's the way the bird eats. I'll tell you this. This was a huge lesson for me about a beak. I remember I was on a farm. We were doing breeder selection. And they said, Jim, I don't remember what the breed was. So there's a such and such a pullet, and she's constantly at the feeder, and she's not gaining any weight. She's constantly eating. At least she thought the bird was eating. We picked the bird up, and her beak was almost perfectly straight. I mean, it's the most lacking of curve in a beak that I've ever seen. It's no wonder the bird, because her beak. And so this curve is so critical. It's important. So read your standard again, just like Karen and I were talking earlier about heads, is you're comparing beaks. If you have 20 pullets lined up, we're comparing the beaks and we're paying attention to what we're producing there. So,
all right.
Makes sense, Karen?
Yes. And I actually felt like I could see the difference in these pictures between. So I went with, that we had. So I like that. I like although I did discover in all of this that I do not know how to spell the word length. So you will probably find it misspelled quite a few times, because that is not a word I get in the right order. So, all right.
So
go ahead.
I set.
Yeah.
This is another hard one, but Dorking here says medium in size and oval, Cornish, large, round, and prominent. I mean, for the everyday Joe, and not the Joe Tenyas, it'll be hard to see that eye set. And that's a learned skill. It's a learned observation. And, I don't have a lot to say here except look at this, read the standard, look at the picture, compare your birds to it. What have you learned about eye set since we've been?
Yeah, I got some questions for you. So those are coming up next. So let's see. All right. So I can never give you two birds of the same breed, because that would be too easy. I have to make it hard on you. But tell me about number 15 there. Tell me about, I'm getting more of where the eye socket is not tight around number 14, her eye socket is just the shape of her eye. And number 15, you see the whites or whatever that is. I don't know the right words, but.
Yep. And you need to pay attention to that. Did we see that a lot in your red males, or just periodically?
Oh, it's getting more common.
Well, I would watch for it. That's poor eye set.
Okay.
And I don't know what causes it, but obviously, daddies produce sons that look like them, right? Mommies produce. So that, and what Karen's referring to in picture 15, you see the little bit of white. It almost looks like either mucus or something in the front of the eye. That's just the eye set, and it's got this little gap. I know exactly what she's talking about. Matter of fact, some of you, if you've got young birds, you can do all this. You can go out and look at your birds, pick them up. It's a great marriage builder. Have your husband or your wife pick them up and say, let's evaluate skulls and let's evaluate eye set, all right? And obviously that bird, Karen, in picture 14, that's a great eye set on it. I assume that's an Australorp, I think. She got black feathers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So am I putting that simple enough for the everyday chicken guy?
Yeah. So it's better not to have it. I mean, you're not telling me to go out and call all my males that I can see.
No, obviously not. But you do want to watch for it. And I
get better. Okay.
Yep.
Now the other thing I'd like to talk about is, if you can, the feathers on the face. So I feel like some birds, like this Australorp, has a decent amount of feathers on her actual red face versus like the smooth, clear face of the male. Is there?
Yeah.
That's not really, I mean.
What is this? Have you read the standard on that?
Well, I don't even know. Is that under face? In which case we're not supposed to be talking about it. But,
Well, let me tell you this. I can't remember. I would assume, again, I'm looking at the reds. I would say, in my preference, and I can't remember what the standard refers to it. I know it's not a disqualification. If anything, it becomes a defect. When I went to Australia, the Australorps, and if you're an Australorp person, go look at the just Google black Australorps in Australia, and I've judged them there several times. And their faces are completely clean. It's stunning. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's our preference to have this overdose of feathers. The much cleaner face on picture 15 with the Rhode Island red is what we would prefer. Obviously, it looks cleaner on the bird. Now, you'll also notice, and drives me crazy, is when you get in picture 15, you get a little bit of this spiked hairdo right next to the comb. Feathers just stick up. It's not a major issue, but when I'm selecting, if I'm like, dude, you don't even have gel in your hair and your feathers are sticking up, it detracts from the way the bird should look. And I would pay attention to that in selection.
And so for the Australorp in 1973, anyway, it called for the face to have, it says surface, smooth.
There you go. That means no feathers.
No feathers. Okay.
The smoother, the better.
Okay.
Now, if you went, and sometime we're going to talk about this, if you went to the scale of points, I don't even think
No.
There's no point cut.
Yeah. No.
Am I right?
I don't know, but I agree. Sometimes I'm a little picky, but I just want to know.
No. And I applaud you.
I want to know what
I can't find the scale of point. I applaud you for nitpicking. So. To me, you'll never be a good breeder if you're not a nitpicker.
Okay. All right. So last question, and then we'll let everybody go, is when you're talking heads, how early can you see it? I mean, how early can you?
Yeah. So sometimes, depending on the breed, you can see good heads, right? Day-old chicks, especially birds with broader skulls. Have you noticed it with your Rhode Island Reds?
I can't say I've ever evaluated for that.
You didn't get your little measure thing out and measure?
Well, I did for the Australorp babies, but it didn't. But not a day old, that's for sure. I think I didn't.
Yeah, well, with certain breeds, especially those that have wider skulls, Brahmas, Cornish. I just saw a couple of on the Cornish page. Not when they're coming out of the shell, they got good wide skulls on them immediately. So, and that's the ones that I think the bird you want a wider skull on, that's the ones you'd really want to pay attention to.
And that's sort of what I was thinking. If I had a breed where that was something I was working on, if size was now, both of my breeds, I have a little bit more trouble with them being too big, not too small. But I'm like, if size was something I was working on, I think I'd start, evaluating them a day old, not culling the narrow heads, but marking them, marking these ones had wide heads, these ones had narrow heads, and then seeing how they grow out, seeing if that stays consistent, till selection.
I totally applaud that,
because that would make it easier when if you can cull chicks and sell them to somebody else's pets while you're working on, you could hatch twice the amount if you didn't have to grow them out. So I'd take a year and do that if it was something I was working on.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And no, you said that well. You said it very, very well. What are those? Are those on the right?
Summers. Those are summer chicks. I needed to balance the picture out, so I needed some other baby chicks.
Now, Welsummer's not a super wide skull, but you don't want a narrow skull. So on those chicks, it'd be really hard to. But it's not necessary with those Welsummers. But on some of these other breeds where a wider skull is a little bit more significant, then you'd want to pay attention to those skulls. So
just the head. I'll show Joe's comment in a second. The head on a well summer. This is how the standard reads. It should be symmetrical, well balanced, of fine quality without coarseness. So they're not the least bit worried about the length or the depth or the broadness. So
you're exactly right.
But they want it nice and balanced. All right. So Joe's given us a little history lesson with the Australorps here. So brought in the 1920s were from the two foundational breeders. Were not later the lines. Okay, so they're separate from the Australian showbird lines, and the U.S. Australorps are called mottled or gypsy faces. So, which makes sense because they're not the clean faces. That's
right. I'll tell you what. There's a possibility I'm heading back to Australia next year, and I love their Australorps. They're stunning. They're stunning birds. And hey, just before we go, because it is 3:00. Well, it's 59 or 61 minutes. Karen, I want to publicly thank you because you produce this. You put the hard work into it. You plan it, and all I do is talk and kind of follow up. And I just really want to express my appreciation to you. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't want to what are we doing today? And you just have a way of bringing it all together. So thank you for doing this. And we'll see you guys all next week, right?
Now they know who to really blame for the content. No, I'm just
no, all right. They need to line this up. Say, thank you, Karen. Thank you, Karen, over and over.
We'll be back next week. We are going to take Memorial Day itself off. So we're going to skip that week because it's a holiday, but we'll be back next week. So,
all right. Bless you all. Have a great week.
Good luck with your dad. I hope seeing him.
Well, listen. You'll never look at the head of a chicken the same again. And thank you for those encouraging words from my daddy out in Phoenix, Arizona. See you all.
Bye, guys.